Hi there, dear friends. This is your personal English coach, Professor DC, and in this video, we will understand a very simple and short story written by Somerset Maugham. This is called Salvatore. The story was written back in 1936. Now, for those of you who want to understand this story in Hindi language, yes, I have already uploaded the explanation in Hindi. So you want to go to the YouTube search bar and type the story title, that is Salvatore, give a space, then type in Hindi explanation followed by my channel name, that is Professor DC, and you should get it. If you do not find the Hindi explanation, please let me know in the comment section and I will give you the link to the video. For those of you who want to understand the story in English, yes, be with me and we will figure it out. As you can already see on my screen, I have divided the whole story into different sentences. I have segregated the whole story into different sentences. Not only that, I have mentioned the meanings of difficult words on their right to make it very easy for you to understand. So let's go sentence by sentence and let's understand this sweet short story in detail. Starting with the sentence number 1. I wonder if I can do it. So here it seems like the author or the narrator, Somerset Maugham, is unsure about something. The author isn't sure if he will be able to do something or not. What is that? That is to let us, the readers, understand the character, the nature, the attitude of a person called Salvatore. So here the author is trying his best to explain his background, explain where this person Salvatore was coming from, what did he go through, and where is he currently. So the first sentence is the uncertainty that the narrator expresses about letting us, the readers, know who Salvatore was. I knew Salvatore first when he was a boy of 15 with a pleasant face, a laughing mouth and carefree eyes. So let me become Somerset Maugham from here onwards. I will assume that I knew Salvatore. And from here onwards, you can imagine that you are sitting with me, Somerset Maugham, in maybe a cafe or a garden or a very pleasant place, and we are talking to each other, and all of a sudden I start telling you about a person called Salvatore. So this is what I am telling you. There was a boy called Salvatore, always laughing, always carefree, always smiling. And I met him first when he was just of 15 years old, a small boy. He used to spend the morning lying about the beach with next to nothing on, and his brown body was as thin as a rail. I used to go to the beach as well and observe things around. So this boy called Salvatore was always there. Every morning he was at the beach. And he never used to wear any sophisticated clothes. He used to be almost naked. And his skin color was brown. And he was not a fat and a chubby boy. He was slim. You can compare his body with that of a rail. He was very slim and thin. He was full of grace. He was in and out of the sea all the time, swimming with clumsy, effortless strokes. Common to the fisher boat, I never saw Salvatore tensed or worrying about something, or worn out and tired, or sad and unhappy. This boy was always full of gratitude, always thanking everybody, always happy, never complaining. He used to sit at the beach, and when he got tired of sitting, he would dive into the sea and try out the strokes, try out the swimming techniques, which seemed to be a little bit awkward, but this technique was very common to the locals around that area. Scrambling up the jagged rocks on his hard feet, for except on Sundays, never wore shoes. He would throw himself into the deep water with a scream of delight. Not only did Salvatore did not wear any clothes, not only was he half naked, but he also never wore shoes. He had nothing to cover his feet. And so at the beach, he would play around with hard rocks, and all of a sudden, he would dive into the water, screaming with happiness. His father was a fisherman who owned his own little vineyard, and Salvatore acted as a nursemaid to his two younger brothers. If you ask me about the profession or occupation of Salvatore's dad, yes, he was a fisherman. And Salvatore had two younger brothers, and he used to take care of them. Not only was his father a fisherman, but he was also an owner of a vineyard. He shouted to them to come inshore when they ventured out too far, and made them dress when it was time to climb the hot, wine-clad hill for the frugal midday meal. Now, these little ones, sometimes they would go or venture out into an area which was risky. For example, sometimes they would go near to the deep waters. At that time, Salvatore would give them a call or would shout at them to bring them back to the place where there was hardly any water. And all of them, Salvatore's family, Salvatore's father, his two little brothers, they would have a midday meal. Not a very sophisticated and posh. It was a very simple meal consisting of maybe a simple ingredients, and they would have their meal together on the top of a hill which was full of grape wines. So Salvatore had two duties. Number one, to take care of the little boys. Number two, to dress them up when they had to climb the hilltop to have the midday meal. But boys in these southern parts grow apace, and in a little while he was madly in love with a pretty girl who lived on the Grande Marina. So where is this place called Grande Marina? It is in Italy, exactly in here. Yes, here it is. Definitely looks like a dream place. As we know, kids grow very fast. Metaphorically speaking, Salvatore grew up very fast. And there was a girl in Grande Marina area who was very pretty and beautiful. Salvatore could not control his emotions, and he fell in love with her, and that too madly. She had eyes like forest pools and held herself like a daughter of the Caesars. This beautiful girl had enchanting, deep blue-colored eyes, and she carried herself very boldly, as if she was the daughter of the Roman director, politician, and military general Julius Caesar. They were affianced, but they could not marry till Salvatore had done his military service. And when he left the island, which he never left in his life before, to become a sailor in the navy of King Victor Emmanuel, he wept like a child. Now friends, there are some nations which demand specific amount of military service from each and every citizen. That's not the case in India. But looks like the place wherein Salvatore lived, it was mandatory to serve in the military for some time and then go back home. So Salvatore was obligated to complete his military service. And this was for who? This was for King Victor Emmanuel, the King of Italy. and the military service had to be completed elsewhere, not on the same island where he grew up, where he spent his carefree days, but at some other place. And so the condition was serve the military and leave this island. And as you can already imagine, Salvatore found it very hard to leave the place where he was carefree and joyful, and therefore he cried like a small child. It was hard for one who had never been less free than the birds to be at the beck and call of others. It was harder still to live in a battleship with strangers instead of in a little white cottage among the vines, and when he was ashore, to walk in noisy, friendless cities with streets so crowded that he was frightened to cross them, when he had been used to silent paths and the mountains and the sea. We did see the picture of the island where Salvatore lived. And if you spent your childhood there, if you grew up at such a beautiful place, and if all of a sudden somebody asks you to move to a very crowded and noisy place, it would definitely be very hard, isn't it? So the place where Salvatore lived, he had nothing to worry about. He was as carefree as birds. To serve the military, and especially as a sailor for the king, he had to live in a battleship, and that too with strangers. Instead of the small, beautiful, white hut in between the grapevines. Usually, he would take a stroll on the beach, and we know how he would shout and jump into the sea without any stress, without any tension. But here, the place where he had shifted, it was noisy. There were no friends. The streets were very crowded. The streets were so crowded that he was scared to even cross them. Salvatore was very much habituated and accustomed to the silent and peaceful life. He was habituated to the silent roads of the island and the mountains and the calm sea. I suppose it had never struck him that Ischia, which he looked at every evening, it was like a fairy island in the sunset, to see what the weather would be like next day, or Vesuvius, pearly in the dawn, had anything to do with him at all. But when he ceased to have them before his eyes, he realized in some dim fashion that they were as much part of him as his hands and his feet. Back on the beach every evening, he would gaze at the island located at the Gulf of Naples called Ischia, shown on my screen, and would predict the weather. And sometimes he would also gaze at the mountain of Vesuvius, which looked pearly, resembling pearls in color. He used to observe Mother Nature and everything that was around him. But when he had to meet his obligations, when now he was in the battleship with strangers and noise and friendless areas, there was a deep realization that his habits of observing Ischia and Vesuvius, his habits of staying with Mother Nature, were an integral part of him, just like his hands or his feet. He was dreadfully homesick. Salvatore felt terribly homesick. He longed for going back on the island and live carefree and pleasant life under the cover of Mother Nature. But it was hardest of all to be parted from the girl he loved with all his passionate young heart. We know that when we are young, our emotions, they soar like eagles in the sky. We know that Salvatore dearly loved a girl who he met at the Grande Marina. Salvatore was madly and crazily in love with this girl. So it looked as if he terribly missed three things. Number one, the island where he lived. Number two, his habits. Number three, the girl who he loved. And that was the hardest, to stay away from the girl whom he loved. He wrote to her in his childlike handwriting long, ill-spelled letters in which he told her how constantly he thought of her and how much he longed to be back. We are talking about the year 1936. There were no cell phones. There were no applications like WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. People used to write letters, and because he missed his girlfriend badly, there was only one way to let her know: writing letters. Salvatore was a simple boy who didn't care much about his handwriting or education or getting a formal degree, and therefore his handwriting were also childlike. The spellings were incorrect, but somehow he managed to write a beautiful letter where he expressed out his longing for his girlfriend and how he hated the current situation. He was sent here and there to Spezia, to Venice, to Ban, and finally to China. Now these are all naval bases because Salvatore's role is that of a sailor. He is being sent from one naval base to the other. He has to travel a lot as a part of his military service. Sentence number 17. Here he fell ill of some mysterious ailment that kept him in hospital for months. Now this is very natural and obvious. You are traveling from country to country. You are trying to acclimatize to the environment. You are trying to get habituated to the food, and your body is constantly struggling to adjust with the environment, and so there is a high probability that you will fall ill. And so happened with Salvatore. He fell ill. He caught a disease which seemed to be mysterious. Nobody could understand what that disease was. He went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "You have to get admitted. There is no cure, and we are not able to understand the ailment that you've got." And in the hospital, Salvatore had to spend months. He bore it with the mute and uncomprehending patience of a dog. What option, what other alternative does Salvatore have in this case? It is a strange country, a new place, new environment. Salvatore is asked to serve the military service. He has fallen ill of a mysterious disease. All he can do is obey the doctor's instructions. He had to bear the disease and face the disease silently. It was as good as a dog whose patience is infinite and whose patience we can never understand. It is uncomprehending. When he learned that it was a form of rheumatism that made him unfit for further service, his heart exulted, for he could not stay there, for he could go home, and he did not bother. In fact, he scarcely listened when the doctors told him that he would never again be quite well. As I have stated on the right side, rheumatism is a disease when your joints, they swell, when you find it very difficult to move your hands and legs. So the doctors told Salvatore that the disease that you've got is a form of rheumatism. And the doctor, with a very sad and depressed face, broke the unfortunate news to Salvatore. "Salvatore, you won't be able to serve the military anymore. We are very sorry, but you've got rheumatism." And the doctors also told Salvatore that now you have to go home. But how was Salvatore's reaction? He was the happiest man on earth because the disease would allow him to go home. So he rejoiced his heart out. The doctors thought that it would be depressing news for Salvatore, and the doctors went on telling him that he won't be able to live a healthy life. The doctors warned Salvatore that, see, this is a kind of disease which doesn't really get cured. But did Salvatore bother? No, he was homesick. He was dreadfully homesick. He wanted to go home by hook or by crook. So even though the news that the doctor are breaking is serious, something that Salvatore should worry about. But no, he is rejoicing. What did he care when he was going back to the little island he loved so well and the girl who was waiting for him? Rheumatism did not bother him much. Why care about a disease when I could go back home? When I could meet my love, who would be desperately waiting for me? When he got into the rowing boat that met the steamer from Naples and was rowed ashore, he saw his father and mother standing on the jetty and his two brothers, big boys now, and he waved to them. So somehow, by communicating through letters, Salvatore had managed to tell his family that he was coming back because of a disease. And during those times, people would travel by boats and ships. And also we should not forget that Salvatore had served in the military for a couple of years now before he got unwell. So how was his way back home? First, he had to sit in a rowing boat which would meet a steamer from Naples, and from there he had to sit on a rowing boat once again, and that would take him to his hometown. So you can imagine a seashore and a boat which is carrying Salvatore and other people near the shore. Salvatore from the rowing boat is able to see people standing at the shore. He can see his father, he can see his mother and two little brothers who seem to have grown up. They all waved to him in excitement. But who is that one single person for whom he longed to meet badly? His eyes searched among the crowd that waited there for the girl. He could not see her. There was a great deal of kissing when he jumped up the steps, and they all, emotional creatures, cried a little when they exchanged their greeting. If there was someone who Salvatore missed badly and terribly, it was the girl whom he loved. But Salvatore did not see her standing along with his family. He thought maybe she is standing somewhere far away from his family. So he looked around, he looked at the crowd. Nope, the girl wasn't there. But because Salvatore was alive, because he was okay, his family hugged him and kissed him and cried a little bit while they were exchanging their greetings. He asked where the girl was. Mom, Dad, where is she? His mother told him that she did not know. They had not seen her for 2 or 3 weeks. So in the evening, when the moon was shining over the placid sea and the lights of Naples twinkled in the distance, he walked down to the Grande Marina to her house. Salvatore questioned, "Where is she?" Mom said, "I don't know, son. I haven't seen her from like 2 or 3 weeks now." Salvatore thought of visiting her house because of the same reason, to find out if she was okay. So the sea was calm and there was this full moon shining brightly, and the lights of the city of Naples twinkled brightly. And from there onwards, he walked down to the girl's house, which was obviously located at the Grande Marina. She was sitting on the doorsteps with her mother. He was a little shy because he had not seen her for so long. He asked her if she had not received the letter that he had written to her to say that he was coming home. Salvatore neared the girl's house and he saw that the girl was sitting right there at the doorstep with her mother. And because it had been years that he had seen her, he was feeling a little bit shy and a little bit timid and sheepish. The girl also looked at Salvatore, but she looked passive. No reactions, no expressions, no excitement. Salvatore asked, "Hi, did you receive the letter that I wrote to you? Did you not receive any message from anyone about my homecoming?" "Yes, They had received a letter and they had been told by another of the island boys that he was ill. Yes, that was why he was back. Was it not a piece of luck? Oh, but they had heard that he would never be quite well again. So what did the girl and her mother reply to Salvatore? Yeah, we did receive your letter and we knew about your homecoming, but we also know that you are not well. The boys in here told us about the dreadful disease that you have caught. Salvatore said, that's the reason why I'm back. That's the reason why I'm here. Aren't you excited? But the girl and her mother also told him that we have heard that you will not be okay again. You will not be healthy again. Sentence 33. The doctor talked a lot of nonsense, but he knew very well that now he was home again, he would recover. Now this beautiful girl and her mother got the news about Salvatore's homecoming and also about Salvatore's rheumatism, which was incurable in those days. And from the girl's parents' perspective, would they be happy to have their daughter married to someone who has a disease, and that too an incurable one? No, definitely they would not be. So the girl and her mother disclosed what they thought about Salvatore. What is Salvatore thinking during this time? Salvatore thought that it was because of the environment and the food and the people that he fell ill. All he needed was the island and the pleasant environment. He thought that now when he's back, he'll be okay. He would recover quickly. But is this something that the girl and her mother would understand? They were silent for a little and then the mother nudged the girl. The girl's mother wanted the girl to convey a clear message to Salvatore that it's not possible, it's all over, go back. She did not try to soften the blow. She told him straight out, with blunt directness of her race, that she could not marry a man who would never be strong enough to work like a man. Did she really feel for Salvatore? Did she politely told Salvatore that she won't be able to take this relationship forward? Not at all. As soon as the mother shoved or nudged the girl, she rudely and bluntly told Salvatore that I won't be able to marry you. Forget this love, forget the relationship. I am very sorry, you can go back. I cannot marry a man who will be ill throughout his life, who will be weak and who cannot even move his hands and legs. I can really not marry a man who cannot be a man throughout his life. I am sorry, you can go back. They had made up their minds, her mother and father, and she, and her father would never give consent. So while Salvatore was away and while he was diagnosed with rheumatism, the girl and her parents had made up their mind that the girl was not marrying Salvatore at any cost. Especially the father would not permit the girl to marry Salvatore. When Salvatore went home, he found that they all knew. The girl's father had been to tell them what they had decided, but they had lacked the courage to tell him themselves. Heartbroken Salvatore goes back home and interrogates his parents. Mom, Dad, I need to discuss something with you. Did you know about the girl and her intentions of not marrying me? Tell me frankly, tell me honestly, were you aware about their decisions? Salvatore's family told him that yes, the girl's father had clearly told him that the relationship was over, but Salvatore's family did not have the guts, the courage to disclose this depressing message to him because they knew Salvatore is a nice guy, is a decent guy. He would break down, he would not be able to bear this news anymore. And so sentence number 39, he wept on his mother's bosom. When things go wrong, what do? You hug your mother and cry. You lay your head on your mother's chest and cry like a small child. This is what Salvatore also did. He was terribly unhappy, but he did not blame the girl. If a person had ill intentions, if a person was ill-willed, that person would blame the girl directly. Any irrational person would have abused the girl, maybe would have taken a step which was drastic. But is Salvatore an irrational person? No, Salvatore is a good and decent guy. He is always graceful. So despite the fact that the girl and her parents dumped him, and that too brutally, he cried, he was unhappy, but he did not blame the girl. A fisherman's life is hard and it needs strength and endurance. He knew very well that a girl could not afford to marry a man who might not be able to support her. We know that Salvatore's father was a fisherman, and Salvatore also knew that a fisherman's life is hard, and therefore a fisherman's son also needs strength and endurance to face tough times. This is how he convinced himself. And he also understood the mindset of the girl. He thought, I've got rheumatism, my hands and feet are not working, how will I be able to protect her? She is right, I forgive her. His smile was very sad and his eyes had the look of a dog that had been beaten, but he did not complain and he never said a hard word of the girl he had loved so well. His smile was very sad. Is this an oxymoron? Yes, two opposite words in the same line. How can a person smile and look sad? This just means that Salvatore could not laugh freely because his heart was burdened. His expectations were not met. The bright and wonderful future that he had seen with that beautiful girl came down and was shattered into pieces. And if you looked at his eyes during that moment, they clearly conveyed a message of a loss, a defeat. Salvatore looked as if he had lost the battle of life. But because of the goodness that he had, he never complained, never abused, never thought ill about that girl, because his love was true. Now I would like to ask you a question. Do you think the girl loved Salvatore truly? The answer is a clear no. If she loved him truly, she would never dump him no matter what. But Salvatore loved her truly, and so he forgave her. Then a few months later, when he had settled down to the common ground, working in his father's vineyard and fishing, his mother told him that there was a young woman in the village who was willing to marry him. Her name was Assunta. Salvatore tried to forget whatever had happened with him and tried to be busy, tried to engage in the daily errands and daily tasks like working in his father's vineyard and fishing. And one fine day, Salvatore's mother approached and told him about a girl named Assunta who had shown interest in marrying Salvatore. She's as ugly as the devil, he said. Salvatore was in no mood to talk about marriage and relationships, so he blurted this out. I don't like her appearance. She's ugly. She was older than he, 24, 25, and she had been engaged to a man who, while doing his military service, had been killed in Africa. So what's the situation here? Assunta is older than Salvatore, number one, and she is also a widow. Her husband died while he was in Africa fighting some battles. She had a little money for her own, and if Salvatore married her, she could buy him a boat of his own and they could take a vineyard that by happy chance happened at that moment to be without a tenant. We know that Salvatore has a humble background. Not enough money he or his father have. But Salvatore got to know that Assunta was financially stable. So Salvatore's mother told him, let's see, she is financially stable. If you marry her, you will be in position to buy a boat, and maybe you guys could buy your own vineyard, wherein you won't have to find tenants to live. You both can live there happily. His mother told him that Assunta had seen him at the fiesta and had fallen in love with him. There was a local festival which was attended by Salvatore and family. Assunta noticed Salvatore and fell in love. That's what Salvatore's mother described. Salvatore smiled his sweet smile and said he would think about it. On the following Sunday, dressed in the stiff black clothes in which he looked so much less well than in ragged shirt and trousers of every day, he went up to high mass at the parish church and placed himself so that he could have a good look at the young woman. So somehow Salvatore was convinced by his mother. When Salvatore heard about her financial position, about the fact that she is a widow, and also keeping in mind that Assunta liked him, now he was prepared to meet her, or at least take a good look at her. So Salvatore gave a very innocent, childlike smile to his mother and said, okay, if that's the case, I would think about it. So the very next weekend, the very next Sunday, he dressed himself up in such a way that he would look representable, good looking. He wore black clothes and they were skin tight. And let me tell you, he did not look better, at least for me, because I have seen him in ragged shirt and trousers all the time. So I am habituated seeing him in tattered clothes only. But here he is trying to look good in skin tight black clothes. And he went up to the church and positioned himself in such a way that he could clearly see Assunta. When he came down again, he told his mother that he was willing. So standing in between the crowd, far away from Assunta, but still in a position that he was able to see her clearly, Salvatore was now ready. Salvatore observed Assunta, judged Assunta inside the church itself, came back home and called his mother and said, Mom, okay, let's go for it. I'm ready. Sentence 50. Well, they were married and they settled down in a tiny whitewashed house in the middle of a handsome vineyard. And so it happened as decided. They got married and they had their own vineyard, and in the middle of a nice and lush green vineyard, they had their own small white-colored house. Salvatore was now a great big husky fellow, tall and broad, but still with that ingenious smile and those trusting, kindly eyes that he had as a boy. Many years passed after his marriage and after they bought their own vineyard. Salvatore was now a man, tall, strong and handsome, with a muscular body, with a face that bore honest smile, and innocent eyes, sinless and charming eyes. Sentence 52. He had the most beautiful manners I have ever seen in my life. I don't think Salvatore would have committed a single crime. He was the most well-mannered boy I have ever seen or met. Assunta was a grim visaged female with decided features, and she looked old for her years. But she had a good heart and she was no fool. Again, as you already know, I knew Salvatore when he was a 15-year-old boy, and now here he is, tall and handsome, married with Assunta, and still he is well-mannered and well-behaved, the best boy that I've ever seen. If I tell you about Assunta, his wife, she was not at all good looking. She had very common and ordinary features. And if you looked at her, you would realize, you would feel that she looked older than her actual age. But let me also tell you that she was the best woman at heart. She had a very good nature. So friends, doesn't this usually happen? It is my personal observation, and I would also request you to observe. If a person, whether it be a boy or a girl, has good appearance, is good looking, his or her nature would not be that good. If a person is very well behaved and good at heart and a well-wisher, that person would not have a great appearance. Is it just my observation, or you also have observed this at some point in your life? Let me know in the comment section. Moving on, I used to be amused by the little smile of devotion that she gave her husband when he was being very masculine and masterful. She never ceased to be touched by his gentle sweetness. Because now Salvatore was a man grown up with responsibilities. Sometimes he would be dominant, sometimes he would be authoritative, showing off his masculinity. How would Assunta respond to his authoritative behavior? She would show utter devotion and dedication. She would smile. She never ceased to be touched by his gentle sweetness. We know that Salvatore was a sweet guy, and whenever he was sweet, Assunta felt great. Assunta felt blessed. But she could not bear the girl who had thrown him over, and notwithstanding Salvatore's smiling expostulations, she had nothing but harsh words for her. Assunta could not believe that how on this earth did this girl who lived at Grande Marina dump my husband. My husband is so good, is so sweet and innocent. My husband understands responsibility so well. How could a girl throw this man over? So Assunta would always abuse that girl for her coward act and for the fact that her love was not true. Presently, children were born to them. It was hard enough life. As years passed by, Salvatore and Assunta had children as nice babies. But was everything smooth and easy going for them? Not at all. It was a hard life. They struggled to earn. They struggled to make the ends meet. All through the fishing season, towards evening, he set out in his boat with one of his brothers for the fishing grounds. Following his father's footsteps, Salvatore also became a fisherman. And there's a time when fishes, they exist in large numbers, which is called fishing season. And every evening, Salvatore would jump up on his boat with one of his brothers and go for fishing. It was a long pull of 6 or 7 miles, and he spent the night catching the profitable cuttlefish. Now, cuttlefish is a type of fish which is on demand. People buy this breed too often, and so Salvatore had to first of all travel 6 or 7 miles far away from his home into the deep sea. Not only that, to catch this breed, he had to spend nights on the sea. Then there was a long row back again in order to sell the catch in time for it to go on the early boat to Naples. Whatever he caught that particular day, he had to place the fishes, place everything that he had caught into the first boat that would take the fishes to Naples and into the market of Naples so that the fishes would be sold. So the task is pretty difficult. Salvatore would have to travel a couple of miles into the deep sea, catch the cuttlefish, or sometimes spend the whole night there and come back home and catch the first boat to Naples so that his fishes are sold. At other times, he was working in his vineyard from dawn till the heat drove him to rest, and then again when it was a trifle cooler till dusk. So if you look at a broader picture, Salvatore did two main things: working in the vineyard and fishing. When he was not fishing, you would find him in the vineyard, taking care of the vines and the grapefruits and making sure they are growing well. But sometimes the temperature would rise and there would be heat. The atmosphere would turn hot, and there he had to rest. But during the evening, when it was a little cooler, he would start working again. Often his rheumatism prevented him from doing anything at all, and then he would lie about the beach smoking cigarette with a pleasant word for everyone, notwithstanding the pain that racked his limbs. Salvatore had caught a disease during his military service called rheumatism, because of which he could not move his hands or his feet very smoothly. So sometimes his body would ache in pain. It prevented him from doing anything at all, and so he had to rest at the beach smoking cigarettes. But he would still be smiling at people, at foreigners, at tourists. He never showed the pain that he was going through in his limbs. Sometimes he used to bring his children down to give them a bathe, or bath, however you pronounce it. They were both boys, and at this time, the elder was 3 and the younger less than 2. Sometimes Salvatore would bring his children, just for fun, to have a hearty bath in the seawater. What were the ages? The elder one was 3-year-old and the younger one was 2-year-old. So it was a pleasant father-son time. They sprawled about at the water's edge, stark naked, and Salvatore, standing on a rock, would dip them in water. So these little boys would sit, lie, or fall, or we can say play around on the beach, completely naked, in the hands of Salvatore. And during this time, Salvatore would be standing on a rock and dipping them into the water. The elder one bore it with stoicism, but the baby screamed lustily. The elder one didn't like the fact that he had to bathe daily, and so he silently endured the pain that was given to him by his father. But the younger one did not understand anything and was enjoying the whole act. Salvatore had enormous hands like legs of mutton, coarse and hard from constant toil. But when he bathed his children, holding them so tenderly, drying them with delicate care, upon my word, they were like flowers. Salvatore had a good physique. He was well built and he had muscular body with toned legs and very strong hands. And why was this? This was because of the hard work that he was doing, toiling every single day, toiling in the morning, toiling at night to make ends meet. That had made his body muscular. But when he bathed his little ones, holding them so tenderly and cautiously, when he was drying them with utmost care, the same hands, the same legs which appeared muscular looked like gentle, beautiful, delicate flowers. He would seat the naked baby on the palm of his hand and hold him up, laughing a little at his smallness, and his laugh was like the laughter of an angel. The boys were naked, we are aware of that. He would pick one of the boys and make him sit on his palm. So you can imagine Salvatore's palm and how big it would be, and then hold him up in the air and then laugh at the little boy about how tiny it was, how small the boy was. Salvatore would laugh out innocently like an angel. His eyes then were as candid as his child's. Salvatore had eyes which always reflected innocence, truth, and honesty. They were no different than that of the boys. I started by saying that I wonder if I could do it, and now I must tell you what it is that I have tried to do. So the narrator, Somerset Maugham, is again referring back to line number 1. I wonder if I can do it. We weren't really sure what is the author or the narrator trying to do here. And in line number 68, he is opening the Pandora box. The author is trying to tell us what he was trying to do. I wanted to see whether I could hold your attention for a few pages while I drew for you the portrait of a man, just an ordinary fisherman who possessed nothing in the world except a quality which is the rarest, the most precious, and the loveliest that anyone can have. So, what was the author trying to do? He was trying to build an image of a person who has a rare quality, a quality that maybe only 5% of the whole world's population has. That one powerful and rare quality. Heaven only knows why he should so strangely and unexpectedly have possessed it. We don't know how Salvatore possessed that quality. Was it inherited? Was it in his genes? We're not really sure of that. It is very strange and unexpected. All I know is that it shone in him with a radiance that, if it had not been unconscious and so humble, would have been the common run of men hardly bearable. The rarest quality? Up to this point, we do not know what that is. The author has not told us. But in sentence number 71, the author is stating that this quality shined like the sun, shined like the star in him, with so much positive energy, so much radiance. And the quality came upon unconsciously. Salvatore was not aware that he had to behave in a certain way. Salvatore was not aware that he had to forcefully bring out this rarest quality. It was unconscious. And here Somerset Maugham, or maybe the narrator, states that if it was not unconscious, if a person had to forcefully bring it out, people would misuse it. If this quality was intentional, people would pretend to be possessing that quality, and therefore people would become unbearable. And in case you have not guessed what the quality was, I'll tell you. Goodness. Just goodness. So, till sentence number 71, the author did not disclose the name of the quality, but only stated that Salvatore possessed a quality which was unconsciously in his DNA. The quality was humble. And this is the quality because of which Salvatore is living a very pious, humble, honest and truthful life. And then in the end, the narrator is asking us to guess the quality. Revealing the answer, the author says it is goodness. So, haven't you heard from your elders that if you do good, if you be good, if you think for the betterment of others, that's exactly what you will get back. If you're kind and generous and good to others, life will give you situations where people will be kind to you, where you will receive only good. Life is a boomerang. It will give you what you have given to others. You must have heard of this proverb, what you sow, so shall you reap. Couple of other proverbs, what goes around, comes around. Despite being dumped by that pretty lady, Salvatore did not blame her, did not abuse her, did not take any drastic steps. He moved on. And Salvatore lived a great life because there was not a single tinge of untruthfulness in him. So the moral of this sweet story is, do good, be good, and you will get good. So I hope you've understood this story. If you still have doubts, please let me know in the comment section and I will try to answer them as quickly as I can. If you have suggestions or feedback or recommendations on my teaching pattern, you're most welcome to let me know. And you know very well that I'm fiercely dedicated to help you out in your English subject. I thank you for watching and I hope you have an amazing day ahead.